Okay, rolling.
Hello, welcome to The Jungle. I'm your host, Amberly Lobo. Today, we're getting a masterclass from a real-life superwoman. She started 4 businesses, lived everywhere from Spain to South Korea, raised a beautiful family, and even done time in the Army Reserves. In this conversation, we talk decision-making, balance, doing the work, how to start a business, her top sales tips, and so much more. Welcome to The Jungle, Suzanne Dodds.
Welcome to The Jungle with Amberly Lobo.
Suzanne Dodds, welcome to The Jungle.
Thank you.
I am so excited to be doing this. I've got to admit, I was a little bit overwhelmed when I started writing this one because you have done so much. I mean, obviously today we know you as the founder and CEO of Complete Home Filtration, but before that, you've started 3 other businesses. You've lived everywhere from Spain to South Korea. You've done your MBA. You've raised a beautiful family. You've even done time in the Army Reserves. And I was like, how are we going to fit this all into one show? But I think I've done it and I'm so excited. So thank you so much for taking the time to be
My
here
pleasure.
today. I want to go back to the beginning. You were born in Northern Ireland.
Yep.
When you were little, your parents immigrated to New Zealand. Then you spent some time in Australia. But by the time you were 12 years old, you were back in Belfast. So
I was.
what was it like growing up in Belfast?
Well, that was a shock to the system, coming from Brisbane, beautiful weather for a start, and then ending up back in Belfast, in the 80s, basically, the late 80s, and it was, the Troubles were going on back then. So not only was the weather a real disappointment, but also, the way of life just was not the same. In, Brisbane, it was, going to the water parks at the weekend and the park and swimming pools and all that sort of stuff, and then going back into working class Belfast was, it was quite disappointing. It was a bit of a culture shock.
Did you have like an entrepreneurial flair as a kid? Were you like out on the corner selling lemonade or mowing people's lawns?
Yeah, we did the lemonade stand. I think in the 80s, in Brisbane in particular, when I was there was like a real entrepreneurial sort of vibe, I think, going on amongst the kids anyway. And then my parents were both very entrepreneurial. They'd obviously immigrated out to Australia for an opportunity away from Northern Ireland. And, just around the dinner table at home, it was always about, they were always talking about business opportunities. My dad was a builder, my mum supported him, and it was always, I suppose, just part of, what we spoke about opportunities, financial opportunities for the family.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, at age 17, you joined the Army Reserves.
I did, yeah.
What was the decision behind that? What drew you to that?
Just adventure, really. Being in the armed forces in Northern Ireland was a little bit tricky. So, because of the Troubles going on, there was, like a sort of I suppose it was stated, but, if you were in the armed forces, you were basically the enemy of the, the IRA and, different Republican sort of organizations over there. So although I'm having grown up in Australia, I wasn't political at all, like all the Troubles and everything about it. I sort of missed all of that indoctrination side of it. But actually a Catholic friend of mine from school had joined the Army Reserve sort of a year ahead of me. And he was just coming in and talking about, being over in England and Scotland and doing all of this training and assault courses. And, just like, it seemed like he was having a really good time. So that was what drew me to it. Obviously the danger element and not being able to really tell people about it and to have to, watch where you were driving. So when you went to the actual army base, in Northern Ireland, you would have to watch that you weren't being followed. There was security on, there were certain protocols around actually being associated with the armed forces in Northern Ireland. So we couldn't do any of our training in Northern Ireland. So although we had a camp there that was very secure, and we went in and we would do, like drill and all that sort of stuff and any other sort of learning that we could do on the camp, we did. But all of the, weekend training, it was all done off-site. So we would normally go on the ferry. It's actually really funny. So it was the Royal Yeomanry was the segment that I was in. So it was all armoured vehicles and tanks and stuff like that.
Oh, that's hardcore.
So we would literally we would go from our base, which was on the Antrim Road, which was, like a bit of a mixed area, but sort of had to go through some dodgy areas. And we would drive up the Antrim Road all the way to Larne, which is where the ferries used to go from Larne to Stranraer, which is in Scotland. So we'd all get into our, like armored vehicles and like drive up the road. We'd get on these big ferries and then we'd go over to Scotland, and that's where we would do our training. So we'd be, out on Salisbury Plain and doing different exercises and stuff like that. But we couldn't actually do any training in Northern Ireland.
And am I right in saying you were the first female in the North Irish Horse? Am I saying that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, was that like intimidating being the first female in that environment?
I think being 17, I didn't really think about it that much.
Well, I would have been thinking about it. You just didn't, it didn't.
Yeah, no, it didn't bother me. Looking back on it, it probably was, it was a very big deal. Like whenever I started, there were multiple men that actually left that regiment because they just felt like, this is it, it's ruined. They're letting women in now. It's not going to be the same. They've been used to having it, like a bit of a boys' club for them for the last, 20 years or whatever. But I was very lucky that the major who ran the camp, he had 3 daughters. And so he was like a real advocate for women. So I didn't ever feel like, I was sort of intruding. I was always made to feel very welcome and sort of really looked after. So yeah, it was good. It was good timing for me because I suppose it sort of made me used to being a little bit of an odd one out and sort of being the only female in certain environments.
Yeah. What was your biggest learning, I guess, from that Army Reserves experience?
Just to really just get stuck in and give things a go, I suppose. Yeah, you just got so many opportunities to do different things. I mean, the adventure training that we did, because I was the first female and, there was this change across the whole, armed services at that stage to recruit more women. I was then sort of naturally, even though I was brand new, put into the recruiting team. So it was, there was a corporal and there was another more senior officer there, and then myself, and the 3 of us, if any women or any men actually applied to join the Army Reserves, we would take them away to a base over in England called Catterick, and they would go through their like a weekend sort of assessment. So it would be like psychometric testing.
Wow.
They'd have to do a bit of, drill. They'd do an assault course and different things, and we would sort of just run them through their paces to make sure, they sort of had what it took to join. So as a 17-year-old getting that opportunity, to
cool.
be an assessor,
Yeah.
with the British Army and, going away flying over to England sort of like twice every month I was away doing assessments, and that I suppose that was really good for my personal development. I was like assessing people that were a lot older than me. It was men and women, although I was there to sort of be a female, the first female for other females that were there, but it wasn't always females that were, trying to get in.
That's so cool. And am I right in saying that at this time as well, you're also studying at university, science and economics?
So when I joined the TA, which is a territorial army, I was still at school.
Oh, okay.
So I was 17. So because I'd come from Australia back to Northern Ireland, I actually ended up being a year older than everybody in my year.
Okay, yeah.
So I was actually still at school. I was 17 years old, still at school, and didn't then go to university till the year, I think it was about 2 years after actually. I finished college, which was part of my school, and I was 18. So I started uni when I was 19.
And you were doing economics?
I did. Yeah.
Economics. And what was your vision for your future? What did you think you wanted to do?
I can't honestly say that I had this big master plan. I always sort of felt like I was going to be successful and I was going to really give, everything that I tried a really good go. And I knew that I could, probably make a success of, whatever I turned my hand to. But I didn't have like a big plan. I did economics because when I went through school, I just found that very logical and I was just really good at it naturally. And so, when you don't know what else to do, you just do what you're good at, because then you're sort of guaranteed that, you're going to get a good result and that's going to lead to, other opportunities for you.
Well, so after you graduated, you married your lovely husband, Tim, and in 1998, you guys moved to Australia, came to Perth. And so what was the game plan? Did you think I'm going to start my own business? Did you apply for a job? Like what sort of happened there?
The game plan was to travel. So we actually bought an off-road camper trailer and a 4-wheel drive and we travelled around Australia Australia for about 4 or 5 months, which was absolutely lovely, just seeing the place. And we ended up back in Perth. We didn't know if we would, but we did, after traveling all the way around.
It's best city in Australia.
Absolutely.
That's why you got me.
Absolutely. But yeah, didn't really have a plan. Always just thought I'd do something using my economics degree. So didn't necessarily think I was going to run my own business. It never occurred to me, really. I thought maybe, Bureau of Statistics or some other sort of economic sort of think tank, or just something using my degree.
Well, so while you're waiting for this dream economics job, you ended up answering and adding a paper, and this took your career in a whole different trajectory. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Big curveball. So we basically arrived back after travelling. We were in Perth. My husband had been in airside operations in Northern Ireland. And so he was just looking at, jobs, with Qantas, Ansett back then, looking at the airport.
Shout out to Ansett. That's an OG reference.
Yeah. And so it was, we were just looking for what you would call our proper jobs, I suppose. I was, looking and applying for different things using my degree. He was looking for things, in airport management and stuff like that. And then we just saw an ad in a newspaper. And it was, our warehouse is overloaded with stock, travellers welcome, like cash paid daily, like this sort of thing. And it was this was back in 1998 when people advertised in the newspapers. And we thought, that looks cool. It's going to attract like a whole load of, backpackers, people our age. I was only, 23, I think, when I arrived. And yeah, we just thought that'll be good. We'll be able to meet people and just make a bit of money while we're waiting for our proper jobs to, arrive.
Life is a jungle.
So you started this job and it was kind of like a salesy role, and you ended up being really good at it. Mm-hmm. And so then this sort of opened up the opportunity for you to start your first job in Adelaide. How did that come about?
So the role that we...
first business, sorry.
Yeah. So the guy that we were working for here in Perth, that little, job ad that we responded to, it ended up being a contractor sales role. So it was like commission only. If you don't sell, you don't get paid. And he had a couple of clients that he was working with. The one that we ended up working on was Westfields had a co-branded credit card with ANZ Bank back then. And so he basically had the contract to run all of the event marketing guys in the Westfield malls. So we would basically just stand at the booth in Westfields and try and stop people on the way past as they were doing their shopping and tell them about this, rewards card, which was a credit card as well, and try and get them signed up.
I love that.
I think it was easy because we'd done the role here in Perth for about 6 months. And that's when we got the opportunity to go to Adelaide. So we worked out we were quite good at it. And then the global chairman of that group, he had actually come to Perth for a visit, and they needed someone to basically build the business similar to Sean's business here in WA in Adelaide and run that campaign for them down there. And so he's asked Tim and myself if we would like to do it, and we were like, yeah, we'll go to Adelaide, let's go.
Wow. I mean, it was a big opportunity, but it was also like a big risk. You were only 23, 24 at the time. You never started your own thing. Plus you had to move to Adelaide to do it. Did you at any point go, no, that's a bit too much?
No, I think I've always just had a spirit of adventure, I suppose. So, moving to Australia, coming back, after leaving when I was 12, I did sort of feel like I was coming home. But yeah, I've always just been a little bit of an opportunist, I suppose, and being prepared to sort of just grab things by the horns and go for it.
That's so crazy. I mean, like, now, obviously, you have started 3 more businesses since then. But if you could go back in time and give like a young Suzanne some business advice, is there anything that you wished you knew back then that you know now?
No, I actually think looking back that the not knowing too much was a good thing.
Oh, really?
Because I think as you get older and you sort of understand all the things that you need to do and the things that can go wrong, and you can overthink things sometimes. Whereas I think back then, just being like, yeah, let's do it.
Whereas now you kind of logically look at it and weigh things up.
Yeah, totally. And you see all the risks. And, when you're younger, you've got more time to not waste. That's probably not a choice of words. But, you've got the time to try things and to fail. And as you get older, and you've got kids and, the risks become a lot bigger. So when you're
Yeah.
younger, it's just like, yeah, let's give it a go.
Well, Adelaide went really well, like super well. And at the time, you had some guys in the team who were from South Korea.
Yep.
And so you started looking over at South Korea and you realized there was this gap in the market. People weren't doing what you were doing. So next minute, you and Tim were on a plane. You moved to South Korea and
Yeah.
this is where you started your second business. I mean, that sounds wild. Like,
It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was it just doing the similar thing here over there?
Yeah. So I was basically working with the same global marketing group who
Yeah.
they basically act as a sort of like a broker, and they sign up like the large blue chip clients. So here in Australia, they work with American Express, obviously ANZ Bank with Westfield's credit cards, and various other telcos and stuff like that. So they were able to get us a contract with ADT Security in Seoul. So we basically went up there with 2 Korean guys from our office in Adelaide, me and Tim, and yeah, that was us. We just sort of they had the internet way before everybody else, so that was like back in 2001, I think it was. And you know, they were already recruiting online, whereas in Australia, you know, we were advertising in the Advertiser down in Adelaide, and everything was really newspapers and stuff like that. And so, you know, being foreigners living in Seoul and building, you know, a international business, it was quite attractive to Korean people. You know, a lot of Korean people wanted to work for a foreign company. So when we started advertising, you know, we literally had people queued out of the building waiting to get interviewed. We were interviewing people 10 at a time some days. It was just extraordinary.
Did you speak Korean?
No.
No. Okay, yeah. So how did that work?
So initially we used our 2 Korean guys from our office. So
Yeah.
they sort of did the translating for us. And then as they sort of got a little bit busier building their teams
Yeah.
and, you know, actually selling and helping us train the sales guys, I ended up getting a PA who was basically like my right arm for the whole time I was in Korea. So she was a lovely girl, and
I should just translate everything.
she just translated everything. She was with me everywhere I went. So even I ended up, we had our first daughter up there, and just even, you know, going to the doctor, finding out you're pregnant, she's like with me at my appointment because, you know, the doctor didn't speak English, and she's mortified. The doctor's asking questions, you know, about intimate things, you know, like, could you be pregnant, you know? She's like, oh, Suzanne, I'm so sorry to ask this. But he's asking me this.
I mean, Suzanne, this is what I love about you so much, because I love how, like, when an opportunity opens itself up, you kind of just like seize the day and throw yourself right in there. You like burst through the doors, because starting a business in, like, firstly, starting a business is hard. Starting a business in a different country, even harder. I mean, starting a business in a country where you don't speak the language, I can't even imagine. That's just like so wild. Did any part of you go, oh, like, this might be a bit much, there's a big language barrier here? Was that a consideration? Or you were like, no?
No, I think just youthful exuberance
Again,
just carries you
still.
through. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's your decision-making process like when you've got to make a big decision like that? Is it just intuition and gut, or is it like a pros and cons thing?
Yeah, I think pros and cons, but ultimately gut. So, you know, looking at the Korean market, you know, there were 48 million people up there, and we'd been working in Adelaide. And so with the campaigns that we'd been working on in Adelaide, obviously we had 3 Westfield malls, which meant we could have 12 staff. So we're really restricted how big we could grow our business. We then got another client. We were working with APT. We were able to put another 30 guys in the field in Adelaide there. But again, once you have like population constraints, you can only grow so big in our industry at that time. So obviously looking at Seoul and South Korea, and you know, there's like 48 million people up there. And we were like, that is just a massive opportunity. So the excitement, you know, like getting a campaign where, you know, the unit economics would work, the numbers would work, and then just having that size of a market to grow into, it was a no-brainer.
Wow. I mean, you say it like a no-brainer, but it's like, to me, that's like just so wild. Talking to a lot of people who are at the top of what they are doing, they all seem to have this ability to like throw themselves into situations that they're not really properly equipped for. Like, I mean, you could have spent 8 months learning the language in Australia and then waited and then gone across, but you sort of just went, no, the opportunity is now, this is what we're doing, and you sort of went for it. Like, how important is having that attitude in business and life?
Really important, I think. You know, timing in business is probably one of the most important things. I think there's good times to do things and there's bad times to do things. And so sometimes you can wait and analyze too much and sort of miss the opportunity. So, you know, I sort of thought in terms of the language thing, it's going to take years and years and years to get myself at a level where I could have like a business conversation in Korean. So that wasn't even a factor. I knew that I would need to have a full-time translator pretty much the whole time anyway.
Oh, I can't even imagine. So Korea obviously went really well. Within a year, you had expanded to 160 staff, and 3 years in, you're making like 60 million in revenues per annum. I mean, what do you think your secret to success was?
Have fun. I think you just need to enjoy the journey. Yeah. And being able to laugh at things as well. You know, it sounds like when you say it like that it was, you know, pretty simple to do, but there were lots of challenges. You know, there were lots of disappointments. We had, you know, circumstances where, you know, we've built the office up to a certain size, and then we would have like someone internally in the office. You know, when you got 160 guys, you can't have like a really close relationship with all of them. So you rely on, you know, your management team. And, you know, we had one manager who ended up not having our best interests at heart and sort of tried to go behind our backs and take our client and, you know, like basically steal our business from underneath us, which, you know, my client ADT at that time were just fantastic. And they called me and were like, Suzanne, you know, need to let you know he's basically come to us and said, we don't need these foreigners. We can do this ourselves. Like, let's just sign a contract and cut them out. And so, you know, the people who had already decided they were going with them, obviously we had to let them all go. So, you know, you do have like real disappointments along the way. You know, things happen, and, you know, it can be a real kick in the guts whenever people let you down like that. And, but you just have to be able to quickly get over it and just move on to the next challenge and have a sense of humor about things.
Would you do it again? Like start a business in a country where you didn't speak the language?
Absolutely. I'd love I'd love my kids to do it as well. I just think, you know, like I was like,
you're so young
when I went up there. And in Korea, like first of all, you know, women are not really well respected. Certainly back then. I know it's definitely changing. And also young people are not respected either.
And you're quite youthful.
I did. I looked younger than, you know, I used to go into meetings. We were trying to sign up LG Telecom at one point, and I remember going in with my translator, and, you know, one of the first things that the senior execs teams will ask is, how old is she? You know, because the language changes in Korea depending on how old you are.
Yeah.
So if you're older than me, I would address you with different, you know, words at the end of the sentences to show respect to you.
Yeah.
So it's not actually a rude thing to ask how old someone is. It's sort of like one of the first things that everybody does over there to work out where in the pecking order they are. But we found out that we couldn't actually say, oh, she's 26. Because, you know, I'm dealing with like a 55-year-old vice president of LG Telecom, and that's just like not going to fly. Yeah. So in the end, we sort of worked out that it was better to say, it's actually not polite to ask Western women how old they are. But don't worry, she's a lot older than what she looks.
Life is a jungle.
Stop the podcast. I just want to take a second to thank our sponsor of the show, American Apparel. We love American Apparel. If you guys haven't checked them out yet, what on earth are you doing? They are back. They are comfy. What else do you need to know? They will make you look really pretty. That's right. American Apparel. Visit them at americanapparel.com.au. On with the podcast. Just telling that story, like, where did you get your confidence from? Like, say being 26, going into the meeting with like a 53-year-old guy, language barrier. Like, where did you pull confidence from?
Probably my mum, I would say. Like, my mum raised us all in a way where we felt very confident all the way through. Like, we were always told how fabulous we were, you know, like, you can do this. And yeah, I think it definitely comes from that child rearing sort of phase, and having a parent that sort of believes in you and tells you that, you know, you can do whatever you want, that you're just as good as anybody else, and if you turn your mind to something and you really want to do it, you can do it.
That's so cool. That's such a good attitude to have towards things. Well, as I said, Korea went really well. Then you got offered this really sexy opportunity in Barcelona to head up a company. So you guys ended up moving to Barcelona. That went really well, but you sort of had a young family at the time and started to weigh up like lifestyle, quality of life. So you
Yeah.
ended up back in the most beautiful city in the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
You ended up back in Perth, and this is where you started your third business, Cola Cooler. What was that one?
Cola cooler. So it was a water cooler rental business.
Okay.
So we basically came back and we've been, obviously building direct sales teams for other companies for the previous 6.5 years. Doing it for NZ Bank and Westfields and Amex and, LG Telecom, ADT Security, basically running these large customer acquisition programs for these big companies and doing really well at it. But we didn't actually have a business to sell at the end of it because you were week to week, you're selling contracts back to the business that you're contracting to. So when we came back to Australia, we had Hannah in Korea, then I had Joshua when we lived in Barcelona. So we had two small children, came back, and it was like, okay, we've got skills. We know we can build sales teams. We've got a small family, so we need something that's going to suit us in terms of a business model. So we looked at like a rental business model. So, you can rent photocopiers or you can rent, at that time, water coolers was something that we looked at. And we sort of thought, that's quite a simple product. We can source some of those from somewhere, build a little business, get a website, get some flyers, and, build a sales team and go out and just speak with businesses and see if we can rent them a water cooler. So that's basically how Cola Cooler was created. It was sort of a business that was designed around our lifestyle.
Yeah, so such an important lesson, because I think when you're starting a business, sometimes you can spend all this time trying to think of like what a cool product would be or what a cool service, but like don't often give time to what do I actually want out of this and how do I want my life to look and what do I want from the business? Like how important is that as a step?
Crucially important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew that I didn't want to have to put the kids into daycare. So I wanted to be, at home with them and be able to spend time with them, and renting water coolers to businesses.
Yeah, it is. Because you weren't water experts or anything.
No, not at all. A friend of ours had actually started working for a company over east, and sort of we had a little foray into that, and she was telling us about it, and that's sort of what sort of turned us on to it. But yeah, it was just one of those things, again, seeing an opportunity and thinking, that looks good, we could do that.
Let's
just
do it. Well, eventually you decided to franchise it. What was the decision behind that?
Yeah, in hindsight, not a very good one. But it wasn't a franchise, it was a license, sort of like a franchise.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just, again, we didn't want to create like a massive big workload for ourselves, to build the business across the country. But we'd sort of got ourselves to a reasonable size here in WA and thought, this is perfect to just, create this in Melbourne, in Sydney, Brisbane. But we didn't want to have to go and do all the work ourselves on the ground. So it was really just looking around. I think franchising was, quite in at that time as well. Back, it was like 2008, 2009, we were looking at this. And it was just, how do we sort of facilitate growth and bring other people in that are sort of, they've got skin in the game and they can drive the growth themselves without us actually having to do all the work. That was the main decision behind it. But in hindsight, what ended up happening was we sold the licenses to people who really were effectively just buying a little job for themselves. They were buying a licensed territory, might have had 200 or 500 contracts in it. And, it might have taken us 1 summer or 2 summers to build that. And so we then expected that as soon as they would grow it.
Yeah.
But, 5 years later, they're still sitting with, maybe 50 more than what we sold them. So it sort of didn't, for us as the licensors, our business model was we were going to make money off selling them more products because they were going to grow their businesses.
Oh, but none of them were growing it. So apart from our one licensee over in Sydney who we knew from our sales and marketing days, who actually trained me how to sell back in the day, and he was going gangbusters over in Sydney, and he ended up buying
the licensor business off us because we didn't want to move out of Perth.
Yeah.
So it was like, yes, we could have went to the East Coast and expanded it ourselves, but our kids were in school and, you know, it was just, we'd already moved all around the world for business opportunities, and we just made the decision that we weren't going to move the kids. We were going to stay here.
So you decided to stay in Perth. At this point, you'd started 3 businesses. You sold Cola Cooler, and then you went back to uni to do your MBA and actually went back to work for other people. Is that right?
So around about 2015, so I hadn't sold Cola Cooler at that point, but because I was, you know, running the licensor business, we also still owned Cola Cooler Melbourne, which we'd built over a summer down there. And so I was sort of running that, you know, I was probably doing about 10 hours a week. So it was really light touch. The year after, in 2015, then my youngest, Sarah, who was born here, she was due to start into kindy the next year. So I was like, I'm going to have loads more time. I'm going to be bored. So I started thinking, what am I going to do? And it was already, you know, we'd started Cola Cooler back in 2007. And this is now, you know, like 2014. I'm starting to think about this. Did the MBA in 2015. So I was getting a little bit bored with it, to be honest, because I was frustrated that we couldn't really
grow it. It was almost out of your control.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, started looking around and thought I'd never actually had a job before. So when we came to Australia, we were working as sales contractors, commission only, had never actually worked in a corporate environment, and always just had this, you know, grass is greener sort of thing going on.
I just started my own business, and I reckon, especially when I first started out in those stressful moments, I'm like, it'd be so nice to have a regular paycheck. Like,
yes. Let someone else worry about paying me for a change.
And just clock out at 5 and not worry about anything. Like, what was it like going from working for yourself to working for someone else?
Oh, I think I just left it too late to try and do that. So I worked for PwC for a little while, and I mean, they're a great business. And, you know, in management consulting, it is a little bit like running your own business within their business, because you've got to, you know, pitch yourself to teams within the business to get on certain projects and stuff like that. So it was a little bit entrepreneurial, and, you know, there was opportunities there as well. So it wasn't just your normal sort of boring 9 to 5, but I just felt, you know, even after sort of 7 or 8 months, I was just getting very frustrated with the pace of things, you know, and just looking around at, you know, managers and directors and stuff in the business and how long they had actually worked there to get to where they are. I was like, I don't have time for this.
And so then you're out.
Yeah.
And so Complete Home Filtration, which is your 4th company, which is where you are now. That was about 2018 you started that.
Yep.
How did that actually come about?
So I actually did testing with a very generic product back in 2014. So when I was still in the mix, you know, like during Cola Cooler, and just didn't really pick up. I couldn't do any testing here in WA because I'd sold the licensed territory to someone here, and we had a restraint of trade. So I wasn't actually able to get stuck in and do the testing in my backyard where I was able to really be involved. So over on the East Coast, Sean over there did a bit of testing. I had a friend who had a business in Auckland in New Zealand, sent him over a load of units, and I went down there and worked with his guys. And yeah, it was just tough going, and it didn't really go anywhere. So I ended up having about 40 or 50 units sitting in the garage.
When you say units, just to frame the conversation, these were like
whole house, like just
whole
a
house
standard
filtration units, basically, is the business.
Yeah, just like a 10-inch, really bog standard filters in it. Whole house water filtration systems.
Okay, so you had these in a shed.
In the garage.
And you started thinking, hey, maybe I could do something with these.
Yeah, I just had them there since 2014. And
collecting dust.
And I just had it. What's that movie with Will Smith in it? You know, where he's got those bone density machines and he's running around trying to sell them. It was almost like that. It was
turning into happiness.
It became a bit of a joke actually. And then it was the restraint of trade ran out, and I've been working in PwC. I left. I got poached from there. I went into Bendigo Bank and was working in their senior leadership team for a while, and then a friend of mine was working for a solar business and he needed some help, and so I went in there and did a little bit of consulting with him. And I was just sort of at this crossroads where it was like, okay, do I go back into the corporate world, or am I gonna have one last hurrah? And I just thought, the restraint of trade's done here. If I'm going to give it a go, I need to do it now before I get into anything else. And I just thought, right, I'm going to do it. At that time, Tim was in the police.
Yeah.
So I went and did my MBA in 2015. And at the end of 2015, he went into the police academy. So he was sort of like still in the throes of, you know, being a cop. And I was leaving, you know, like a regular paycheck, you know, a couple of kids in private school. And it was quite risky. But I just thought, you know, I'm not getting any younger. And if I don't do this now... it's never going to happen. And I just couldn't understand why it didn't work the first time.
Yeah.
Because for me, you know, having filtered water through the whole home, it just makes sense.
So what did you do? So you had these filtration systems in the shed. You've decided to go all in and give it a crack and see if you can sell them for the first time in Perth. Like, what did that involve? Did you what was the strategy behind this?
So I literally just did it hardcore. Went out knocking on doors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Door knocking.
Yeah. So I got a website together. I got some brochures.
Like you got someone to build the website for you?
Yeah.
Just like a knock up, like a cheap.
Yeah, it was like $300 or something.
Like, okay. So
yeah.
just something so there's something there.
I was just trying to prove, it was proof of concept really at that stage. Like I just thought if I can sell those 50 units, I can sell 50,000.
Okay.
You know, if we can innovate the product and just find out what people want, what is this got that they like, what doesn't it have that they like, and, you know, just go from there. But like, I just needed to know, why are these systems not being sold in Australia? You know, they were being sold in the US. A lot of people have got whole house filtration systems over there. But just in Australia, there were water filtration companies that had them on the shelf, but nobody really sold them. You know, it was like there, if you as a consumer walked in and went, I want a whole house water filtration system, they could have sourced you one, but nobody was really selling them. And I just didn't know, is it because there's no appetite for them in Australia and people just don't want them? Or is it because people don't know about them? So that was a question that I needed to answer. And I thought, if I just get out there and start talking to people about these systems, talking to them about their water at home, and if they would be, you know, interested in getting filtered water through every tap, and that, once that was sort of discovered, and I knew that actually people, when they know these systems exist, they do want them, and that was then sort of like the big green light for me to charge headlong into it.
Life is a jungle.
I want to rewind a little bit to what that experience was like when you went door knocking for the first time. So you've built this little $300 website. You've, like you said, you've got some brochures that you've made up. Take us back to, you're sitting in your car, you've pulled up outside your first street. Like, how are you feeling before your first...
Sick.
I would have been as well.
No one, I don't know anyone that actually likes door knocking.
No. Did you go to a neighbourhood where you knew people, or were you like...
No, you don't want to know people when you're knocking on doors.
Oh
no,
God.
But you know what? I feel really sad that, you know, the whole door knocking as an industry has really dwindled away. Because even whenever, you know, we were in Adelaide and we worked with APT, we had, you know, a whole bunch of like travellers, young people all out, you know, like speaking to people about their phone lines at home. And people were, you know, saving loads of money, moving away from Telstra at that time, who were the, you know, the incumbent. And I just saw so many young people really develop, you know, through, you know, call it resilience training or whatever you want. But, you know, whenever young people have to do things that make them uncomfortable and sort of fight through, you know, their own body saying, go home, don't do this is embarrassing. Or, you know, like they have to take objections from people, take negatives from people. And I just saw so many young people just gain so much confidence that actually, you know, even now, you know, there's people that, you know, we trained how to go door to door, you know, back 25 years ago, and they're running businesses and they're doing all sorts of things. So I do think that
it's a missed skill.
It's getting lost now, which is, you know, where are we gonna get our next generation of like entrepreneurs and salespeople from whenever they don't have that, you know, grassroots training?
Yeah, I couldn't think of anything more scary. So, like, how did your first door knock go? Was it like an instant success? Was it a yes?
You just, when you're door knocking, you just have to be ready to take objections. You know, people will be like, what are you doing? Get a real job. Slam the door in your face.
Oh, is that what it was like?
But that's not everybody. You know, like you might get 1 in 30 that are like that. But most people, you know, if someone knocks your door and there's someone standing there with a smile saying, hey, how are you? Nothing serious. Just wanted to talk to you about blah, 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 whatever it is. Most people are pretty receptive. I think it really just depends on the person that's standing on the door.
How did you like, because rejection is hard. Rejection to the face from someone in front of you at a door, that would be like really hard. How did you not let it get to you? Like you'd go back to your car and someone's just been like, no, go away. Like what was your thought process?
I think just having come from the direct sales industry, you know, that's part of what you develop when you're in that industry. You develop a really thick skin and you don't take it personal. You know, it's part of success. You know, rejection and, you know, call it failure, call it whatever you want. You know, just not everybody's going to say yes. You know, if things were really easy to do, everybody would be doing them. You know, if you expect to get things out of your life that other people don't get, you have to be prepared to do the things that other people don't do. And so understanding that, yes, you're doing something that makes you feel really uncomfortable. It's not pleasant, but I'm doing this because I believe that it's going to create an opportunity for me and for my family that otherwise I wouldn't have.
Yeah, wow. And so how long did it take, do you reckon, before you got your first yes when you were door knocking?
I got yeses within the first month.
Oh, well, a month.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That you stuck it out. That's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And so what, when you got a no, would you just go back and sort of refine what you did and then try again? the
Yeah,
next
a
time?
lot of it's trial and error.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
just getting like a good, concise spiel, you know, when someone does open the door, and getting the key messaging across in a way that they understand is really important. And just making sure that, you know, whoever you're speaking to, you leave people on a really good note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if we were to parachute sort of into your life in 2018, in this early phase when you're starting up complete home filtration, like what was it like? How many hours were you doing? What was the workload?
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
absolutely hectic back then. So, yeah, I mean, I just had like a booklet with like lists and lists of things that needed done, you know, and the business just really started to take on a life of its own after a little while. And I think I was like 7 months in and I'd done, you know, maybe 200 sales or something like that. And had been, you know, one of the good things that I learned from my MBA was just, you know, to get out there and network with people in Perth, and had chatted with a guy called Charlie Gunningham, who's really big in the startup space back then, that I'd met at UWA. And he had sort of suggested that I chat with another person in the startup space here in WA called Derek Gerard, and he had just taken on a role with RAC as their entrepreneur in residence, and they were launching their Better Labs venture fund. And it was sort of I think at that stage it was only $3 million that RAC had set aside to invest into early stage businesses here in WA to help them sort of grow. And so had a chat with them. He said, yeah, get a pitch deck together and, you know, like send it in and we'll have a look. And that was sort of the bit that I did different this time to the way that I'd normally built businesses that all been built very organically. You know, direct sales and marketing is very, you know, cash rich, asset poor. So you don't have a business to sell at the end, but you're making really great money along the way because you're selling contracts back to a client. Whereas with this business, it was going to require a lot of money up front. You know, I wanted to develop the product, water filtration. You know, it's not traditionally, like, it hadn't really been innovated in quite some time. You know, like systems looked quite ugly. You know, they were just selling off the shelf systems like I did in the beginning, which, you know, the water quality around the country and even throughout suburbs is very different. So you need to make sure that you're actually getting people the filters that they need, and it's a good quality filter. So there was a lot of product innovation that I wanted to do, you know, obviously marketing into a segment where nobody knows this product exists. So you don't actually have customers. There's no one out there, you know, like actively looking for a whole house water filtration system. So it was really creating the industry. And, you know, now we've got plenty of competitors, but like back then we didn't have any because nobody knew about it. So there was this whole education piece that we were trying to do, as well as to build the business.
And so you applied for that funding with RSC Beta Labs.
Yes.
And you got it.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did. Yeah,
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was brilliant at
So
that
you're
time.
the first ones. You're the first ones that they funded.
Yes.
Through that.
Yeah, through that particular fund. Yeah, I think they'd done an investment into Power Ledger some years before, but through the Better Labs entity, I was the first investment.
How much did they end up giving you guys?
So initially it was 250.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, which when you're like a little fledgling business,
yes.
it takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was great. And, we invested the majority of that into product innovation.
That's so cool. And I mean, obviously, if we fast forward to now, you guys are doing so many incredible things. Now you're all across Australia. You've grown to 130 staff in 6 years, and you're servicing like tens of thousands of people. And you've moved office so many times because you've been growing so fast. And I mean, just on a personal level as well, you've won so many awards. I was going to try and list them, but then I was like, this would take up too much of the show. I mean, so congratulations on everything that you are doing. What's been like the biggest highlight for you?
I think just seeing the business grow. I mean, certainly in the early days, when you're the one driving everything and you've got your big lists and you're stressed out, and it's really hard. It was really hard work in the early days. But now, I've got an amazing leadership team. I've got a brilliant general manager. I've got, so many amazing staff as part of the business, and just sort of observing them do their thing. And I was off last week. I came back in on Monday, and there were 6 new staff that had started. It's just going around saying hi to everyone, and it's just the business has just sort of turned into its own, organism that grows on its own, and just seeing everybody, doing their parts so well. It's it's really nice. It's really nice to see all the staff, and, everyone really cares about the business, and, everyone's really excited about what we're doing. And yeah, it's just really nice to see everybody and see them doing their bits in it.
Did you ever think it would get that big? When you were starting out?
I mean, obviously you map it out on a page. You've
Yeah.
got your spreadsheets and you've got your business plan, and you do plan for it to be that big. But obviously a plan is just a plan, and you sort of you're hoping it does, but you don't really know if it's going to. So when you actually start to see it come to fruition, and we're just getting started. We're just under 30,000 installs, and our market is just absolutely enormous. If you look at all of the homes of people, either with a mortgage or owned outright, living in a freestanding home across all of our, cities, there's 7 million homes.
Yeah.
7 million people, with a home that could get installed, and we've only done 30,000. So.
But, you could go to Korea and sell to 41 million?
Yeah, well, actually, they all live in apartments.
Oh, it's okay.
So it's not a great market for us.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You'll stay in Perth. That's good to know.
Yeah.
You were saying before, you did mention that early stage, how stressful it is. Maybe someone's tuned in and they're in that startup phase of their business, and they feel like they're on a treadmill, wearing all the different hats with the gigantic to-do list that never seems to end. It only seems to grow. Do you have any advice for people on navigating that stage of business?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just need to really run your numbers. I have along the way, I'm involved with the startup community here, and I chat to people all the time and do some mentoring and stuff like that. And, there's lots of really great business ideas out there, and, people doing amazing things. But sometimes, people will have an idea for a business, but they haven't really thought about how are we going to make money, and what do we need to do to actually make this great idea an opportunity into an actual business that can, pay the bills and grow of its own accord. So I would just say, make sure that, before you do invest all of your time into really pushing, to make something work, actually run your numbers properly, look at the unit economics, understand everything, and make sure it's worth your time. There's an opportunity cost to you not working as well. Sometimes people just think about the opportunity of the business that they're trying to build, but how much would you be earning if you were doing something else?
I'm just working a 9 to 5, yeah.
Yeah, you need to take that into account as well. And I think sometimes, people get enamored with the idea of running a business, as opposed to actually, I've got this great idea and I can make a business out of it. So, yeah, I would say just make sure that you're definitely going in the right direction before you spend a lot of time. But if you know that you've got a great idea, there's a good market there, and you can make it work, just go for it and don't let anything stop you.
Do you reckon like the entrepreneurial life is for everyone?
No, definitely not.
No. Who isn't it for?
I think there's certain times in people's lives when it's not for them
Yeah.
either. So there's good times, when you can take risks. You need to be in a position where you can actually take a risk. And as you get older, I think those windows of opportunity definitely shrink, especially if you've got kids in private school, you can't really take risks unless you want to really disrupt them. So really, yeah, I suppose just making sure that it's the right time in your life and you've got the right personality for it as well. So some people are not okay bearing that sort of risk, and it can really, wreak havoc with their health and stuff like that. So I think you have to have a little bit of, resilience. Absolutely. You've got to have a lot of resilience, but you also have to have the ability to laugh, I think, and not be the sort of person who is affected by failure. You have to be prepared to fail.
You're gonna fail.
And you have to be okay with that. If everything you did worked, well, that would be wonderful, but that's not business.
Yeah.
You start going down a particular path, things are working, then you get a challenge. You've got to overcome that challenge. Some people look at that challenge like, oh, I failed, because this isn't working anymore, or, the way that I'm doing it isn't working. It's just a challenge. It's not failure. It's like, this is what business is. It's like trying to go in one direction and there's block. You've got to get around it. You got to go over it. You got to solve the problems. So having that drive to keep going without really taking it personally, I think is really important.
Yeah, so true. Well, I thought it'd be kind of cool to round out the conversation with some practical tips. And so want to start with productivity. Obviously, you are in a position now where you're wearing less of the hats where you were in the start, but how do you juggle everything? You've still got a beautiful family that you've got to look after. I know you've been traveling a lot with work. Like, how do you manage all your time?
I think you just take, each week at a time. Like in our family, we try and set time aside a couple of times a year to go on holiday together. And I feel like sort of week to week, it's not easy to get the balance, with family life. And, like all my kids just know that, we're all just, very business focused, so there's not a great balance. Obviously they've got their sports and, horse riding and their friends, and we make sure that they get to all of that. But it's definitely skewed towards business focus in our family. But we just try and make sure that we have, some really good quality time 2 or 3 times a year where we'll go away and it's like, we're on holiday and we get to spend all day, every day with each other, not just like a couple of hours after school or after work or whatever. And we just, I really love those times of the year whenever we get to sort of really connect again and hang out.
Do you have any tips on sales? Obviously, that has been a really strong thread throughout your career. You seem to have this ability to be able to sell. Advice for anyone on selling?
Yeah, selling is a very important part of business. And it's not just, selling the product, but, if you want to raise money, you need to sell to investors, you need to sell yourself, you need to sell your business model, you need to sell everything that you're doing. Recruiting as well. Recruiting is selling, especially when you're a young business and you want to try and attract really good people into your company. But maybe that caliber of person doesn't really want to work with a startup because it might be a little bit dodgy. They might rather go with a bigger firm. So, selling and being able to communicate effectively and sell what you're doing, it's crucial. I would say, if you can't sell what you're doing, you're probably going to really struggle to build a business.
Is there anything people can do to work on that as a skill?
Yeah, just get out there and, even just
Door
go.
knock.
Yeah, go and get a job with a direct sales business and go out and learn how to sell. Selling's just about talking to people.
Yeah.
I think the sales industry has got such a bad connotation, like Del Boy, people trying to scam each other. And that's not what sales is about. Sales is about basically communicating effectively all of the features and benefits of the product or the service that you've got that makes it relevant to the person that you're talking to and makes it easy for them to make a decision. And, just no nonsense, just have a conversation. They're either going to say yes because they want it, or they're going to say no.
Yeah.
And that's really all it is. You know, like I think sometimes there's all these sales courses that people can go on, and it's all about, you know, manipulating people into, you know, buying something that they don't want. That's, for me, that's not what selling is about. Selling is just about positioning your product and making sure, first of all, that you've got a great product, and that's where innovation comes into it as well. But then communicating that to customers in a way that they can just understand it really clearly, and you make the process easy for them, and they say yes.
And lastly, tips for starting a business and growing a business.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it. Yeah, but work out your numbers. You know, obviously, like I'm a big one for, you know, spreadsheets and how many sales do I need to do to sort of break even, to grow, to do this, to do that. Like, yeah, definitely work out your numbers. Don't sort of go into things blind. You know, make sure that you've got like a real opportunity to run a business. Have a look at the competitive landscape. Is anybody doing it? You know, anticipate what's going to happen next. But yeah, if you've got a great idea and you're confident that you can make it work, just do it. You're going to have challenges. Don't let them stop you, as long as you believe in what you're doing.
And how about growth? You've started it, you're in it.
Growth, I would say, like, get a good team around you. You're only one person, and, you know, depending on how big you want to grow, you're going to have limitations being one person. So get the right team. Like, having the right team is really crucial. You know, there's a saying that I read ages ago. It was, businesses are started by generalists, but they're scaled by specialists. So as the business sort of becomes bigger, you know, we've got an HR manager now, we've got an operations manager, we've got a general manager. You need to get people who are specialists in their field to really drive the business forward.
Yeah, there's only so much one person can do.
Yeah, and just get out of the way. Yeah. You're not the specialist. You know, let the specialists do what they do.
Did you find that hard? Do you find that hard, like letting go and getting out of the way, or has that been?
No, I'm really confident in the team that I've got. I feel, you know, like obviously initially when they first start, you sort of keep an eye and make sure that you've made the right decision. But once you're confident you've got the right person there, just let them do their thing, and yeah, just trust them.
Well, for someone who has achieved so much, how do you define success?
I think success for me is just about general contentness and health, having my family are all healthy, and just being happy, having time with them. And I feel very blessed to have the opportunity that I do. You know, like I do pinch myself sometimes that, you know, I'm living in Perth with this, you know, wonderful business, that I get to travel and meet so many, you know, cool people. And, you know, some of my kids now are working in the business. And yeah, it's
door knocking?
No, we don't do that anymore.
Oh, we don't do that?
We haven't done that since before COVID. No, we do like lots of other types of marketing now. So we're on the block this year.
I know.
Yeah. We do lots of TV, radio, digital. Yeah, that was just sort of the in the trenches way to sort of get the business started, but we moved away from that quite quickly. Yeah.
Well, no, it is honestly been incredible to like hear about your story, and you live this big, like bold, loud life, and it's just so inspiring, and I'm so excited to see where you go, and honestly congratulations on everything that you have achieved.
Thank you.
Where can people like find or follow yourself or the business?
Just online. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, just completehomefiltration.com.au. Jump on our website.
Home Filtration. Well, Suzanne Dodds, thank you so much. Just lastly, life is a jungle. Do you have any parting wisdom for listeners on how to navigate the jungle of life?
How to navigate the jungle of life? Yeah, just grab that vine and swing from it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was perfect, Suzanne. That was amazing. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me on socials at Amberly Lobo. And for more information on the show, visit amberlylobo.com.au. That's it. Have an amazing day, whatever you're up to. And remember, life is a jungle. Grab that vine and swing from it. Bye.